Denim Couch Podcast. Ooh, whoa, ooh, whoa.
The 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s with Steph with an F.
Hi guys, welcome to the Denim Couch Podcast, where we chill on this denim couch and talk about the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. I'm Stephanie Tanner. Welcome. Hey guys, it's Stephanie Tanner with the Denim Couch Podcast. And today's episode is with Sheryl Merkley. And I am really excited for Sheryl's interview. I, once again, am so happy that she was willing to do this and share with us what it was like for her to live in the 70s. Sheryl has been a sewing teacher and has done that for a long time. She is also a great singer, just a wonderful, caring person. And she has a very thorough overview of the 70s. And I love that. I think she did a great job covering so many events of the 70s. So I'm looking forward to this. This is our 28th episode of the Denim Couch Podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode just as I did. Let's dive in. And my first question for you is, can you tell me a little bit more about your name?
So my name, Sheryl, was not that common. It wasn't, you would hear it once in a while, but it wasn't an extremely common name. I've gone throughout my life having met other Sheryls, but not too many that spell it with an S. Most of them spell it with a C.
What was life like back in the 70s?
So living in the 70s, it was a pretty interesting time. Early 70s was a whole nother period of time that I was in middle school and, just trying to figure out myself at that time. But what was going on in the world is the Vietnam War was just getting over with. And there was a lot of emerging innovation going on. The entertainment world was taking off with TV shows and more movies available. And people were taking advantage of that more. They were being entertained more by TV. People were, finally had their colored TV sets and the TVs, you thought you had a big TV when it was 17 inches and it had the rabbit ears that you would have to adjust to get your reception. So entertainment changed a lot during that time too. And then as you go through the 70s, and when I was in high school from 1973 through 1977, that's when some of the technology, the computer era, started to introduce itself. However, a computer in the late 70s, what consisted of this big, huge, monstrous-looking box that would be in a room. It would be the server that whoever was working in that area would be working off of. And I don't know a lot about computers, but I just remember it was not something you could put in your purse. It would take up an entire room. The 70s also was the era for women. The revolution, the ERA, Equal Rights Amendment, was taking place, and there was a lot of protests and for equal rights, and a lot of women that were getting out and speaking out against certain things. And so that was kind of an interesting time. I had to listen to a lot of things and try to understand what was going on and trying to figure out how I felt about that. And so that was interesting. It was also during the 70s, probably mid-70s, early 70s, and it went throughout the 70s. There was kind of a hippie movement going on where there was a lot of free love expression. Kind of went along with the Equal Rights Amendment with women. Women wouldn't wear bras and they'd burn flags, and this especially was going on the West Coast. And probably because I'm from Idaho, I heard most of the news coming from California and Oregon. And so there was a lot of that going on. Discrimination still existed, and riots happened because of it. A lot of that was publicized, and it was pretty sad to see some of that going on. And in the late 70s, President Carter, Jimmy Carter, was the president from 1977 through 1981. and there was kind of this economic crisis. There was a real problem with the price of oil, and it was pretty devastating because interest rates were going out the roof for mortgages. And my parents would talk about how expensive it was, or how high the interest rates were. And I just thought to myself, I think I was a senior in high school, that I'll never be able to own a home. There's no way I'm going to be able to have a home of my own when I get married. Because at that time, a regular mortgage was 17 to 19%. So fortunately, we got through that. And, Jimmy Carter was the president, and he was a very likable man. He was a man of faith. He kind of had a gentle way about him, very different from what we have now. But he wasn't a very good president, in my opinion. And we had a lot of economic problems during that time, a lot of debt. And so that was kind of an interesting experience. And then during the 70's, drugs were a real problem, illegal drugs. And a lot of my classmates got involved with illegal drugs, and they became really prevalent and very accessible. And I just remember every day going to school, and I would usually be sitting by somebody that was high. Many of them were failing school. A lot of them just wouldn't even come to school. And some of them just kind of fell off the face of the earth, and I never knew what happened to them. I saw what it did to other people, and I just decided that's not for me. And then also during this time, it was interesting, kind of goes along with the hippie movement. There was a lot of tree huggers, and I have nothing against people that, promote care of the environment and the world we live in. I really applaud that. During this time, there were a lot of people that they were doing drugs at the same time. And in my mind, I was thinking, okay, they're really saying we need to take care of our environment, and yet they're harming their own bodies. So I kind of, in my mind, thought that was a real contradiction. Again, I applaud, but I just felt bad because then they were not taking care of themselves. But also the 70's opened a lot more opportunities for women. It used to be that women were only nurses or secretaries or teachers, which are all very good professions, and I went into teaching myself. But I think in the 70's, women started realizing they could pursue other career opportunities, and they started to do that, and they started to go into medicine and science, and whatever they pursued, they were able to do. There was no discrimination by the time the 70's came around for them. They could do anything they wanted career-wise. I'm sure there were still obstacles in some of those careers, but they pushed forward and did that. So I give a lot of credit for the women that did that. And then in my high school, there weren't very many sports available for girls. You're either a cheerleader or on the dance team / drill team. There was track that the girls would do, tennis, and maybe volleyball, but that was basically it. You never had a girls' basketball team or a girls' soccer team, at least where I lived. So it's nice to see that all the sports, for the most part, are available for girls to do.
What did you do for fun in the 70's?
Some of the things I did for fun probably were just hanging out with my friends. And I found that I was very, very busy with extracurricular activities. So the people I hung around with, or spent time with, were involved in those activities. So a lot of my free time was doing those activities and participating and being with the people that were doing those. I did make friends, by getting involved with my church group, church activities. And then I was very involved in 4-H, which is a wonderful organization. I spent a lot of time doing 4-H projects. I also participated in the 4-H state leadership. I was elected as the 4-H state song leader. So when we had Congress once a year at the state level, kids from all over the state of Idaho came to that, and we would have gatherings, big gatherings, and I would be the song leader and get up in front of everybody with my guitar and lead them in singing just to kind of get their spirits going. So I was kind of like the cheerleader for the Congress. And I was able to go on a 4-H exchange program, which took me to Japan. So the friends that I made with that experience made it a lot of fun. Just having time with them, going to a different country, and then the people I met over in Japan. So I also had a lot of fun spending time singing with my best friend, who was a talent beyond anything I'd ever seen at that point. She could just sit down and write a song, notes on the piano, and lyrics at the same time. And so we would just sit around the piano, and she would teach me the latest composition she made, and we got involved in singing groups, choir, performance. I was in a performance choir. I was considered a swing choir. We were called the New Dimensions, and we would go on tour, and just something kind of a normal thing that anybody could do. When I was growing up, they had Saturday night dances that was held at our church. So every Saturday night, you could go to the assigned church building, and you could go to this dance, and you could meet kids from all over the area that you lived in, from different high schools. And sometimes they had live bands, and they don't have those anymore. Usually they'll have a dance maybe for New Year's Eve or Valentine's Day or something like that. But this was the kind of dance where you could just go with your friends. You could dance with your friends if you wanted to. The boys weren't asking. You could just kind of stand and dance. Or you could, if you really were smart, you got away from your friends and you would stand by yourself in a location that was, people could see you. Mm-hmm. And so when I did that, the boys would ask me to dance. But the boys did not like to come up and ask you to dance if you were the pack of girls. We went to the car races at the local auto speedway, which was in Meridian. Usually it was on Friday or Saturday night, and I usually went with my family. It's just a couple of years ago, my husband said, "What do you want to do for your birthday?" I said, "I want to go to the Demolition Derby." So we went to the Demolition Derby, and then 9 months later, I wanted to go to the car races in Las Vegas. And so we went to the car races and the NASCAR. We spent the whole weekend. And I think it all was because I remember doing it as a kid, going to the Meridian Speedway and watching the cars race. So, and then summer night, baseball games. I remember going with my dad and just watching the local team. Going to the fair, of course, was fun. The kids were known to go drag Main Street. I had a friend talk me into it, so I wasn't much of a risk taker, but I did it once. And what you did is you would go up and down this main street, and every time you came to a stoplight, everyone in the car would jump out, yell, fire drill, and run around the car and then hop back in. They'd have a carload of kids, and they would somehow get flagged down by another carload of kids. So let's say there's a carload of girls and a carload of boys, mm-hmm. and they would somehow get the message to each other. We didn't have cell phones or anything like that back then, that they wanted to meet at a certain location, and then they'd go off and meet that group. And then, of course, TPing houses was a big thing back then. When I would do it, it was always as part of the drill team, and we would TP all the houses of the athletes, the football players, before homecoming. I was always afraid of getting caught.
What were some popular activities?
Probably the sports was a big part of our community. At least when I was in high school, going to the football games, going to the basketball games. I was part of the drill team, and part of our responsibility or part of our duties was to be at all the games, and we'd all stand. We stood through the whole game, watched the cheerleaders and, follow their instruction and what they were doing, and we would cheer for them through the whole game. And we were not to leave our group. When I was growing up, we used to do road shows where we would each church congregation would use the young people, the youth, and they would come up with a road show, which was a mini play that they would write themselves, and then they would perform it, and they did kind of they would go to different buildings on the same night and perform their skit or their road show, and they would be judged, and then they would choose the winner. So there would be 5 or 6 church congregations or church groups that would each come up with a road show, and the kids would perform it and then go on to the next church building and perform it for those people. And then at the very end of the night, they'd all come together at one church building, and they would announce who won. It was a lot of sacrifice because you had to go for practices before school started, at least 2 or 3 times a week for a short amount of time. They would start them like a couple months before the performance. The Eastern Idaho State Fair was a big deal, and community always came out for that. Going down the river, rafting down the river was something fun that people did in our community. The schools would put on high school plays. I did participate in one. I was in Camelot. And then Sound of Music was another play. Community always came out and supported local talent and events that was going on.
Do you have any favorite memories from the 70s?
Before I was in a performance jazz choir or swing choir, as they called it back then, and we were called the New Dimensions, and it was kind of an elite group you had to try out for, and if you got in it was pretty big deal. I was in it my senior year. One of the rules at the high school I went to, you couldn't be in 2 performance groups at the same time because of the time factor involved. And so I did drill team the first 2 years, my sophomore and junior year. And then I decided I really wanted to do this performance jazz choir. So I didn't do drill team my senior year, and I did the jazz choir. And we were able to go to some singing competitions all around the western states. But when I was in it, we went up to Portland, Oregon for one of our events, and we competed in an event where high schools groups from all over the region, the western region, came to participate. That was kind of an adventure because you're leaving home, you're going for 3 or 4 days with your high school group, and you're meeting people from different parts of the country. Before my senior year, I had to audition through American Legion Society. I had to give a speech, and they chose me to go to Girls State, which I did the summer before my senior year. Mm-hmm. And Girls State, it's a leadership camp where you learn about how politics work and how government works. I was very fortunate to be able to be chosen and go to that. So you do the whole politics part of it. You do the campaigning and you do the election. And so I was like campaign manager. So I did the campaigning, and this all occurs in a week. And then the other experience or memory, I was able to go to Chicago. It was during my senior year. I was chosen to be a representative from the state of Idaho to go to the National 4-H Conference, which was in Chicago. And it was in 1976. So that was the bicentennial celebration of our country. And so for me, it was the first time I had really had to go to a really big metropolitan city. I did go to Japan when I was 13. I did go to Tokyo, but just kind of was in one little area. But Chicago, when I went to Chicago, it was pretty exciting because it's a beautiful city. And there were kids from all over the country that were my age that had been selected from their individual states. And I do remember the first night, I'll never forget the first night that we were at this conference. They had a big dance for everyone in a huge ballroom at the fancy hotel that we were staying at. Everybody was staying at the same hotel. And they had 5 different bands set up around the edges of the room. And each band would play a set of music in their style for a period of time, like for a half hour. And then it would go to the next band, and they would be a different style of music.
What was the style like back in the 70s?
Okay, well, the fashion sense back then in the 70s, I'm going to start off with the hair. It was longer hair for the guys. Usually you couldn't see their ears. It was covered with hair. And some guys did really well with longer hair, and some guys not so well. But that was the typical hairstyle, just a little bit shoulder length hair for the guys. And the girls were more Farrah Fawcett type hair. So you did the little swoosh back. But a lot of girls, that took a lot of work. So a lot of girls just had long hair like they do now. A lot of them just had long hair with a split down the center or the side. And that's how I wore my hair for the longest time until I was a senior. And then I did get it cut shoulder length and did more style to it, more curl to it. And then the clothes were typically jeans with kind of a bell-bottom flare. And one of the styles that I look back and I think why is they would split the side seam up their jeans like to about the knee, and then they would insert like a godette of fabric, like a triangle of fabric. That would make the flare even bigger, and it would be out of like a cotton fabric with, lots of design in it. So just kind of crazy design in it. The girls' peasant type shirt they would wear that was elasticized around the neck and the arms, or they would like wear a baby doll style top. A lot of times those shirts had like sleeves with a little flare to them. Plaid was a big fashion statement back in the day. Plaids have always been popular. They're even popular now.
What made you happy back in the 70s?
I really enjoyed developing skills and possible talents. I have a lot of talents that are mediocre. That brings me joy. I'm not an expert at anything, but I can do a little of something with most things. And I think also back then happiness was having friends. They were really important, but I also didn't have that need to be popular. I really didn't need to be popular. I didn't need to be, the one that everybody talked about. I just wanted to be liked. And so I think for the most part, just being a friend to as many people as I could be and being liked was what brought me happiness. And I think also just knowing who I was inside brought me happiness. I wasn't confused about what type of person I wanted to be in my life. I kind of knew what I wanted. And I think that came from a lot of examples I had from people in my family and those people that I associated with outside of my family.
Were you ever scared, unhappy, or anxious?
I don't think you're being totally honest if you say you've never been scared or anxious everybody experiences that. It doesn't matter how grounded you are. Everybody experiences those feelings. And so, I felt scared at times as I was growing up. And so as I look back, I realized the times when I was scared probably was when my naivety, I realized that those things I was naive about, I was exposed that I was naive about those things, and I would feel some anxiety about that because I didn't know quite how to handle that new information or that new experience. And so I would feel anxious about that. I also felt sadness when I felt I was being treated unfairly. Yes, I was not part of the social media frenzy that we have now. I didn't have that immediate feedback on how many likes or unlikes you get or no likes you get. But I still, even when that wasn't part of my world, I was still bullied. And so when those things happened, that made me really sad. So those were disappointing experiences that I had and that I know everybody has during their life. And I remember me being on the other side. I was the one back when I was in elementary school, but I was the one that was spreading a rumor that was not kind about one of my friends. And I remember how that hurt that person and how sorry I was about it. And I learned very early on that I didn't want to be part of that. And as I experienced that growing up, I realized it's really how you handle those experiences, those disappointing times, that really make the difference.
What brings you peace or calmness during hard times?
That's a really good question, especially right now. We're going through this pandemic and there's a lot of questions. Why are we experiencing this? And so there's a lot of questions that you'll have throughout your life. And I can say that I feel peace in my life during those hard times by turning to God. And if I didn't have faith of, a loving Heavenly Father, and if I didn't have the knowledge that I have a Savior, Jesus Christ, I think it would be really difficult because it's helped me know it's all going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And then I'm also able to feel peace when I reach out to God and ask for help, whether that's in prayer or just in constant communication with Him. And then sometimes you have to get to that place where you can reach out for His help by first listening to good words or reading good words, and then also listening to good music. I think that always helps. And then for me, going out into nature, going away from the noise always helps find peace. And also having a family that I know is there for me, that loves me, gives me comfort. And I'm very blessed to have a husband that listens to me and that is very kind. And I know that we can get through difficult times together, and that as an individual, I can get through difficult times. Gotten involved in family history and read the histories of those that have gone before me. They went through some pretty tough times, and I think, okay, if they could get through these tough times, and really what I'm experiencing now is nothing compared to what they experienced, then I can get through it too.
I loved her stories about the jazz bands and 4-H and drill team, and Sheryl is really involved in community activities, and I just admire that. I love all the different things that my guests have told me about. Most of them have done very different things in their earlier years, and everyone has talents and hobbies that they enjoy, and those things keep us happy. And this week, I've been really thankful for the friendships that I have. I need to do a much better job of reaching out to my close friends, and I've been thinking about how awesome it is to have the friendships that we do. Especially during these times, it's interesting because we don't get to see them. And in many cases in life, I feel like a lot of our friends are far away and we don't see them daily. So I think it's really awesome to check in with your friends. I need to check in with my friends, see how they're doing, catch up with them, see how things are going. I know some people who are amazing at this. They'll write letters, give phone calls all the time. They're really on top of it, and it's awesome. Anyways, I hope you guys have a wonderful week. I will see you next time. Bye. Wait. You can't miss the embarrassing story of the week. No. Okay. It's that time. It's Steph with an F's embarrassing story of the week. All right. So this week's embarrassing story, I was driving into town. We drove all the way to Rite Aid and back, and it was 2 blocks before the tire center, I should say. And I noticed that the rim, I could hear like the rim hitting the ground almost. I swear it had to happen pretty quickly because we didn't notice it before that. So we slowly drove the 2 blocks, like crawling to the tire center. We lucked out. I could not have changed that tire. There's no way. I have a fear of changing tires. It's horrible because you have to basically keep an entire car up with the jack, and I have a fear that it will crush me. So embarrassing story is that I would rather have ruined my tire and driven to the tire store, which was 2 blocks away, than change my tire. When we got there, the worker told us we were going to have to replace all 4 tires because we have all-wheel drive, and that this tire looked like it was just shot. And I thought it was ruined too. But luckily, he came back in after looking at it, and we were able to save the tire. So a little embarrassing. So hope you guys all have a wonderful week. I hope your tires stay nice and aired up and you have no problems with them. Have a good week. I will talk to you next time. Bye.
If you came here for mental health help, please go visit your doctor. If you're looking for some mental health tips, Dr. Daniel Amen is someone I follow. I love what he has to say and offer. I think his website is brainhealthassessment.com, and he just has some awesome checklist items that go over brain health or habits that you should be doing to have better brain health. I want to say there's like 5 to 10 items, and if you have those, if you're working on those habits and trying to improve them to improve your brain health, you'll also improve your happiness level, because brain health equals mental health. So keep your brains happy and healthy, and check out Dr. Daniel Amen. This is not sponsored. I just really like what he has to say, and I think it's really beneficial. I think it can help a lot of people. It's actually very matter of fact, kind of obvious, but yeah, we neglect so many of these habits daily. And I do feel like, if you're feeling unhappy, that may be one of the reasons you're unhappy, because you're neglecting your brain health, which is also your mental health. And yeah, trying to improve these habits could really help. So check him out. If you have any stories from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, please get in contact with me. Let's chat. I want nothing more than to chat about the past. I want nothing more than to chat about the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. If you have any specific questions that I'm not asking that you would like to know about these eras while interviewing these people, please let me know. I would love some advice, and I would love your input. So what would you guys like to know?